Hey everybody, Nicholas here, and in this free course, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to get started as a podcaster. Whether you are starting out from the absolute basics or whether you know a little bit about podcasting and you just want to figure out what strategies are working and how I launched 3 successful podcasts in 2020, this is the video to watch. So I've broken this course up into 7 parts. I wanted to keep it as short and actionable as possible with no fluff. We're going to cut right to it, and every video is going to teach you something that you need to know about podcasting, including my 5-part system for starting a podcast. So let's jump right in. Quickly, just a little bit of information about me. I have over 11 years of digital marketing experience, and on my most popular podcast called Growth Marketing Toolbox, I've interviewed over 150 growth marketing experts and entrepreneurs, everyone from Seth Godin to Sujin Patel, and you name it. And then I've done over 290 episodes since starting the show in November of 2015. So I've sort of been doing this for a while, and what I'm sharing with you in these videos is all the different tips and tricks and techniques I've picked up. Of course, it's not the only way to start a podcast or to run a podcast, but it's something that's worked for me. It's easy to replicate, and it's allowed me to have some really good success in the podcasting world. So, my shows, as I mentioned, my most popular podcast is called Growth Marketing Toolbox, where I interview growth marketing experts and marketing professionals, and they share what tools are working for them. I also have another podcast called the Landing Page School Podcast, which is a different format because I didn't want to do just an interview format show. So on the Landing Page School Podcast, it's just me. I try to keep the episodes under 20 minutes, and I share tips and tricks on how to convert more of your website visitors into leads and customers. And the third show that I recently launched is actually going to be a show that I do 3 times a week. So it's more of a time commitment, but they're very short episodes, like 5 minutes or so. And I'm just sharing the tips and the news and the articles that people need to know if they want to become a better marketer. So it's called Growth Marketer, or the Growth Marketer Podcast. So why should you start a podcast in 2020? Or why is this a good time to start a podcast? Well, there's really 3 reasons to start a podcast, and right now, this is the perfect time to do so because podcasts are still not necessarily mainstream, and they're easy enough to start, but they're a little more difficult than starting a blog or something like that, or an Instagram page. So that means that because there's a higher barrier to entry, there's not as many podcasts as there are blogs or Instagram pages or that type of thing. And with that comes the opportunity to really be able to stand out. But when it comes to why you should start a podcast, there's really 3 reasons that I find when I talk to podcasters why they want to start a podcast. It's usually one of these 3 reasons, or 2 of them, or all 3. Number 1, it's to build a loyal audience. It's a great way to connect with an audience over time. Number 2, it's a way to become a thought leader in your space. So whether you are an author, an entrepreneur, a marketer, a designer, a baker, whatever it may be, this is a great opportunity for you to become a thought leader in that space. And of course, the 3rd reason is probably the most obvious. It's a good way to sell things. Although for me, the way I look at podcasting, I don't try to directly sell on my podcast, but it's a way where I've built relationships over the years as a marketing consultant, and it has certainly given me a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't have had with client opportunities, speaking engagements, those types of things. So there is a selling or sales component to it, and you can take that as far or however you want to interpret that. But those are really the main reasons why someone would want to start a podcast. So what I would recommend you do is think about why you want to start a podcast. What is it that is driving you to want to explore podcasting in 2020? Is it to become a thought leader? Is it to build a loyal audience? Is it to sell more stuff? Or is it all of these, none of these, or maybe some other reason? But this is really one of the best places to start by thinking about what your goals are with podcasting. Okay, so I want to share some quick statistics with you just to give you an idea of the podcasting industry and where we're at. So this is a really cool stat from Edison Research, and they found that 51% of people 12 years or older in the US have listened to a podcast at least once. So a majority of people in the US have listened to podcasts. And this is up from 44% in 2018. So there's a lot of growth there in just a few years, and that's going to continue. So there's a lot of opportunity here. The other stat I want to share is from Forbes, and they find that podcast ad revenue is expected to reach $863 million in 2020, this year, and it's going to reach over $1 billion by next year, 2021. So just to thinking of the business side of podcasting, there's a lot of money in the advertising side that's getting invested in the podcast space. Now, a question that often comes up is, how do people consume podcasts? Because you have to go where the listeners are. You need to know, where are they consuming this content? And according to Anchor, which was recently acquired by Spotify, they find that the majority of people still listen to podcasts on Apple Podcasts, because Apple actually is the company that started podcasting. The word podcast, originally, the pod had something to do with iPods. So they really are the, as they would say, the OG in the podcasting space. Nevertheless, Spotify is definitely trying to catch up with Apple and take away that market share from Apple, because right now about 19% of listeners are listening on Spotify. And then all the other different places are sort of a combination of that remaining section of the pie. So you can see that Apple is the dominant player where people are consuming podcast content, with Spotify catching up. And then you have little sites like or apps like Stitcher and Overcast and even Google Podcasts, not as popular as those two. Now, in terms of the evolution of the podcasting space, as I mentioned a minute ago, Spotify recently acquired some companies in the podcast space. They paid nearly $340 million to buy a podcast startup called Gimlet Media, which is a podcast producer. They have shows like Serial, I think is one of their popular shows. And then Anchor, which is a podcasting app that lets people create podcasts very, very easily. So Spotify is obviously investing a lot in the podcast space. So with that being said, I wanted to basically set the stage for the opportunity that's in front of you as a podcaster. But of course, in the rest of this course, we're going to focus on the tactical things you need to do to start and launch your podcast. And so I've broken it all down into 5 easy steps. So this course is broken up into 7 different parts, because there's an intro, and then at the end I give you some final advice on podcasting. But in the middle, those 5 videos in the middle, that's where we're going to cover each of these steps. And I've broken it up so it's quick and easy to get through this entire free podcasting course. So with that said, I'm going to wrap up this video, and I will see you in the next video, where we're going to talk about step number 1, defining your idea. I'll see you there.